Story 1. When I was very young. This happened a long time ago when I was in second or maybe third grade. Most of my memories from that time are blurry, except for one night. A night I'll never forget. It was raining, pouring really. After picking me up from school, my parents left to attend some kind of event. Maybe a fundraiser, maybe a dinner party. I can't remember exactly. What I do remember is that they were supposed to be back that same night. But the storm got worse. Roads became dangerous. So, they made the decision to stay over at a friend's house nearby. They called me, apologizing over and over for leaving me home alone. But truth be told, I was excited. No bedtime rules. No one to tell me how many candies I could eat. It felt like a dream. Mom gave me a checklist over the phone. Lock all doors, close the curtains, leave a few lights on, and don't stay up too late. I promised I would, even though I had no intention of going to bed early. Of course, I ended up falling asleep anyway. When I woke up, something fell off. It was cold, colder than usual. The TV had turned itself off, and the house was strangely quiet. Too quiet. I remembered Mom's checklist and got up to double-check everything. Doors locked, windows shut, curtains drawn. Nothing was out of place. Still, something didn't feel right. I went upstairs planning to go back to bed, but the storm was raging harder now. Thunder boomed. Rain slammed the window beside my bed. I tried to close my eyes. Then I heard it a tiny sound, but very distinct. Creak, like wood shifting. At first, I thought it was just a branch hitting the window. But the sound came from inside the room. I opened my eyes. A flash of lightning lit up the room. Everything seemed normal until the next flash revealed the closet. It was slightly open. I was sure I closed it. I didn't scream. I didn't speak. I slowly got out of bed, moving as quietly as I could, one step at a time, toward the bedroom door. Then I ran, down the stairs, into the dining room, under the table, and finally, I cried. I was terrified. Someone or something was in my house. Not long after, I heard footsteps on the stairs, but not normal footsteps. These were uneven, heavy, dragging. From under the table, I saw bare feet step into view. Vet. Muddy, scratched, like they'd been through a thorn bush. Then, clang, a wrench hit the floor. I held my breath. The figure didn't move, didn't bend down, just stood there, right by the table, right in front of me. Time froze, and then they walked away. I stayed hidden for a long, long time. When I finally felt safe enough to move, I crept out, picked up the wrench, locked the front door, and went back to bed, pretending it had all been a dream. The next morning, I said nothing. Years later, I finally told my parents. They didn't believe me at first. Who would? But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And ever since that night, I always lock the doors, always leave a light on, and I never think of being home alone as freedom anymore. Story 2. A rainy night at 15. I was 15 when it happened. It was a rainy Saturday night, sometime near the end. On the last weekend before summer. The rain came down steadily. Most people find that sound. Not me. I've always been a light sleeper. Even the hum of a small fan keeps me awake. So as the rain poured on, I lay in bed, restless, frustrated, wide awake. By around 1 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. Instead, I did what I usually do when insomnia strikes. I went for a walk. My family lived in a quiet neighborhood with a big public park nearby. The park was well lit and considered safe even at night. I put on a raincoat, tiptoed downstairs, and stepped outside. No umbrella, no phone, just me, the night, and the rain. There was something oddly peaceful about it. The wet leaves, the swaying trees, the rhythmic sound of rain hitting the ground. It was soothing in its own way. I wandered for a while, letting the fresh air tire me. After maybe 30 minutes, I felt ready to go home. As I passed through the park, I glanced toward the road and saw something. Lying in the middle of the street was a person. I froze. At first, I thought it was a garbage bag, but the closer I looked, the clearer it became. It was a man, face down, motionless, soaking wet, wearing dark pants and a plaid shirt, hardly what you'd wear in a storm days. My stomach dropped. Was he hurt? Unconscious? Dead? I want to turn around and pretend I hadn't seen it. But what if he needed help? My parents had always told me, if someone's in trouble, don't ignore it. So I slowly started walking toward it. But then a scream from somewhere behind me. Loud, unnatural, like the howl of an injured animal. I spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing. I turned back toward the man. He was no longer lying down. He was sitting up, back perfectly straight. Eyes locked on mine, unmoving. My heart thundered in my chest. And then, he stood up. Without a word, he started running straight toward me. And in his hand was a kitchen knife. I didn't even think. I turned and ran. The wet grass made it hard to move fast, but I pushed with everything I had. Behind me, I heard his voice. "I'm going to kill you." I didn't want him following me home, so I ran in the opposite direction, into the woods near the park. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Eventually, I ducked behind a large tree and crouched down, trying to breathe. My chest was burning. My legs were shaking. I looked around. He wasn't there. I waited. Minutes passed. Maybe more. When I felt safe enough, I took a long, winding path back home. I avoided the road, avoided the park's lights, avoided everything. Finally, I made it home. Choking vet. Shaking. Exhausted. I collapsed in a bed. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I still remember the way he stared at me from the middle of the road, how he sat up like something out of a nightmare. And I still hear that scream, that horrible, haunting scream in the dark. Maybe it wasn't connected to him. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But part of me believes it was a warning. Story 3. The camping trip I'll never forget. I was 29 at the time, and for as long as I can remember, whenever life got overwhelming, I'd head out to camp, not in crowded campgrounds or national parks. I like to go deep into the wilderness, places where it felt like I was the last person on earth. This happened a few months ago, shortly after a painful breakup. I needed space. I needed silence. So one afternoon, I threw my tent, sleeping bag, and some gear into the back of my truck and drove out into the forests of Northern California. I didn't have a plan, just a place in mind. A remote bend in a river I had stumbled across years ago. Not an official campsite. No signs. No other people. Just trees, rocks, water. But as I turned down the dirt path toward the river, something felt wrong. 2 trucks were parked near the entrance. One gray, one white. No one was around, but just knowing others were nearby unsettled me. I hadn't driven all this way into nowhere just to deal with strangers. I hesitated. Maybe I should leave. But then I thought, it's a long river. They'll probably camp far away. I won't even see them. So I kept going. About 15 minutes down the trail, I saw them, 2 men fishing near the water. They looked the part, rough beards, heavy boots, bulky jackets. But something fell off. As I got closer, one of them quickly threw his coat over something on the ground and turned to give me this awkward, forced smile. Then he shouted, "Just shooting at cans. Don't want to scare ya." I nodded politely and walked past, but my instincts flared. His tone, the way he covered something up, the weird timing, it all set off alarms. I kept walking until I found a secluded spot, a bend in the river hidden behind thick trees, just out of view. It wasn't perfect, but it felt private enough. I pitched my tent, cracked open a book, and tried to relax. Light rain started to fall, tapping gently against the leaves. Eventually, I wandered down to the riverbank. The sound of flowing water and rain together was strangely comforting. That's when I saw him again. The same man from earlier. He was standing alone across the river, just watching me. When he realized I noticed, he waved. I hesitated, then waved back. I figured it was better to be polite than suspicious. Then he yelled, "Hey, what's your name?" I don't know why, but I shouted back, "Anisha." He stood still for a moment, then pulled something from his jacket. I thought it was a phone, but it wasn't. It was a disposable camera. Before I could react, click. He took a picture of me from across the river. No explanation, no smile, no words. He turned around and walked away. I stood there, stunned. It was weird, really weird. When night fell, I stayed in my tent, trying to sleep. But I couldn't stop thinking about the photo, about that strange smile, about whatever he had covered on the ground. Then, I heard footsteps, soft, careful, moving through wet leaves. Someone was walking around my campsite, and I knew immediately it wasn't an animal. I always bring protection when I camp alone. I'm not stupid. I reached under my sleeping bag and grabbed my pistol. slowly unzipped the tent, stepped outside, and switched on my flashlight. And there he was, just a few feet away, half hidden behind a tree, staring at me with an empty, blank expression. In his left hand was a small axe. I raised the gun. My voice was trembling, but firm. "Leave. Now, or I'll shoot." He didn't flinch, didn't move. Then, after a few seconds, he mumbled, "Ivan didn't want me to find you, but I had to take care of Ivan." I didn't wait. I fired a warning shot, straight into the trees above his head. He stumbled back. I shouted, "Drop the axe. Now." He did. I told him to take off his shoes, harder to follow me that way, and made him empty his pockets. No weapons. Then I packed my gear as fast as I could, keeping the gun on him the whole time. I grabbed his axe, threw his shoes deep into the woods, and ordered him to walk the opposite direction. Once he was out of sight, I ran. Hard. Back through the forest. Back to the trail. Back to my truck. The two parked trucks were still there. I didn't stop. I threw everything into the back and peeled out of there. As soon as I had signal, I called the police and gave them everything, the description, the location, what happened. I don't know if they ever found him. But to this day, what still haunts me are his words. I had to take care of Ivan. I don't want to know what that means, but I'm glad I was armed. Because if I hadn't been, I might not be telling this story at all.